Up the ABR for today being July 9th. And roll call as everybody is, roll call.
Gilliland.
Here.
Reagan.
Here.
Bozel.
Here.
Poole. Here. Rivera.
Here.
Zink.
Here.
Sherry.
All right, Sherry's absent. Moving on, I'm going to open up with public comment. If anyone from the board wishes to address the board for an item that's not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing nobody, I'll close item A, public comment. Going to the approval of the minutes from the meeting of July 25th. I was not at that meeting, so I will just conduct it, but I will abstain from the voting. Are there any comments on the minutes? Starting with item 1. Going on to item 2. Item 3. Item 4. Item 5. Item 6. Item 7. And that is it. If there's no discussion, the minutes are, there's no correction, so I'll call for a vote. Actually, I need a first and a second.
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair.
First by Keith, second by Chris. Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain on that. Moving on to item C, which is the consent calendar for July 2nd. Do I have someone who will make that motion? First, second by?
Second motion, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Any or that's Tony's job.
Okay, consent calendar July 2nd. Last week we had item A, 401.5 Old Coast Highway. Let's see. Was approved with conditions. Item B, 150 South Lacumba Road was postponed 1 week at the applicant's request. Item C, 900 Calle de los Amigos, got a final approval as submitted.
Okay.
And consent last week was reviewed by Chris Gilliland and Keith Rivera.
All righty. Any other discussion on that? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the consent calendar for Monday, July 9th, which was today. Do I have a first and a second? First by Kurt.
Second.
Second by Keith. Tony?
All right. Consent calendar today, we had item A, 301 West Cabrillo Boulevard, got a project design approval. Item B, 329 West Canon Perdido Street, got a final approval with a condition. Item C, 150 South Lacumba Road, was continued to the Planning Commission. And consent today was reviewed by Chris Gilliland and Keith Rivera.
All righty. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item D, which is announcements.
Dawn Sherry will be absent today. And we also need an ABR representative to attend the City Council appeal hearing for 901 Olive Street. That got a project design approval here on June 11th. So we need
You
someone to
remember who
attend the
first
meeting.
and seconded the motion?
Yes, Keith Rivera made the motion, Gary Mosel seconded. Kirk Gradine was absent, and Dawn Sherry was absent from that meeting when the project was approved.
Tony, I'll represent the board at that hearing. Do we have a date yet?
Yes, it's Tuesday, August 7th.
Can more than one member go? Or is it just good to have one ABR
We
representative?
usually have one person from the, well, it was a unanimous vote, 5-0.
Between Gary and... Okay.
Okay, thanks, Keith.
Alrighty.
That's all I have for announcements.
Alrighty. Subcommittee reports. Oops.
I'll be absent out of town next Monday, so I can't do consent.
Alrighty. We'll figure out that on Friday. Moving on to subcommittee reports, which I don't believe there are any. There are no active subcommittee, so we will move on to item 1, which is 1130 Punta Gorda Street. Come on down. You're the next contestant. This is a second concept review, so we'll have a set of minutes. Okay. Do you want to go through the minutes?
I could. In fact, our presentation will follow the minutes exactly. So,
If you want to start by introducing yourself.
all right. I'm Jan Hockhauser of Hockhauser Bladder Architecture and Planning. I'm here with David Black and Mandar Kilcar.
Okay.
Okay. So, per our meeting of 2 weeks ago, these items were raised to study or provide detail, and as I just stated, our presentation will follow in accordance with the minutes right here. So the first thing was to provide a colored elevation. And I recommend, this is the Punta Gorda street elevation. It also, this exhibit will also address item 4 due to the placement. What we had before was a row of 4 of 1 unit type, and what we did is we varied that slightly, so we got a more random breakout along that elevation. It shows the two-tone coloration. The street trees are laid in here. We've also addressed the issue of breaking up the fence, where we introduced a vine pocket, and we have a detail for such where the vine can trail on the fence. So, if you will, this is the color and material board that shows the 2 unit schemes, and that's what you see represented here in the 2 color units behind the fence.
Okay. If you don't mind, read the comment and then tell us how you're answering it. Just to
Okay.
refresh your
Well, the
memory.
first comment was to provide a Punta Gorda street elevation showing materials, siding details, and color.
Perfect. Item 2.
Okay, item 2 is study and show the wood detailing to be residential in nature. So if we go into the drawing set that's submitted today, we have specific details that show the window trim and the siding. I mean, that was asked. We've modified, per Ms. Poole's request, we modified the window placement on our typical unit. And you can see that on these pages here. This is sheet A 2.1, where we've introduced some fascia board, frieze board underneath the fascia. We've added windows on the street elevation as well. And that would address item 3. In reading the comments, study the window configuration and sizes along the Punta Gorda street elevation. Provide additional windows addressing the street elevation wherever possible. So I'd like to call your attention to, back to the street elevation, where you can see how these gable windows were added in the interior staircase that goes up to those units. So we think that does a nice job of addressing that comment. Item 4, I just addressed, study breaking up the 4 unit groupings along the Punta Gorda street elevation, and that's evident here on the elevation. We've also spent some time, I might call the board's attention to a slightly revised site plan where we studied these open space and trash enclosures, work with Marburg to determine our trash placement, and we've got detailing for that as well. On page A23, there were 2 comments. Item 5, show the trash enclosures and appropriate detailing. And item 7, where we decided to use the same materials. One board member had suggested that rather than just leave it a natural block wall, that we use materials that are indigenous to the proposal. So we sheathe those enclosing walls in the same horizontal siding that we're using on portions of the unit to tie that in. We provided specific detailing for the trash enclosure itself, using that same motif around the exterior of the enclosure. That would address item 7, and I'll read that. Study enhancing the community building to better blend with the architecture of the project. Include enhancements to the wall material or other material changes. So that's a very specific change there. I'm going to skip 6. We'll come back to it
Okay.
because I want David to address the landscaping changes. Going back to the site plan on A 1.0, there was some discussion about changing this to a green space, and we discussed it further after the meeting last week and decided to embellish it with green elements, but to maintain it as a hardscape because there's limited opportunity for gathering and a little patio. We thought it would better serve this little community as a patio. But we did include the bollards. We enhanced the landscaping, and David's got more detail on that. I'd like him to show that to you in a minute
Okay.
here. We did on item number 9, it said study eliminating the sidewalk at the southerly edge of the driveway, which we did. It's on the landscape exhibit. It didn't happen on this exhibit, but it is part of our project description now.
Can you show us what you mean by that?
Yeah. Let's go to your landscape exhibit. I think I've got one at the back of the set. Okay. Because it's a sidewalk to nowhere, I believe this committee decided, why haven't you just go into a blank
Okay.
wall on the freeway? Let's get more landscaping there. So it was eliminated to address that comment.
All right.
The
Variations of hedges and fence along the
Yeah,
sidewalk.
again, we have a specific detail. And again, understanding the detail and the way these would operate, working with David, we thought this would be a rather handsome way to address all concerns. And we have a nice detail that shows what happens. We detail our fencing, which is a natural stain fence, and then there are pockets at intervals, every 2-unit intervals, to allow this vine to trail on the fence. And it also breaks up the monotony of the fence. So we thought that was kind of a nice device without sacrificing any width in the limited backyards that we have. One of the things that we had discussed was actually having a chain link fence with a hedge growing through it, but that seemed to be like really problematic in so much as that it would require maintenance on the public side and it would eat up that limited 5-foot space. So we thought, let's go with something like this, which we thought would be nice. Item 11, study safety measures for the courtyard, such as bollards. Those are indicated on the plan. And one of the changes that we made that we hope is appreciated, we looked at the aprons for the cars, and we considered actually creating a green stripe under the car, but we thought that would be wasted. So what we did is we pulled back the apron to actually get like what you would typically call in the city's ordinance a bumper credit. So we have like a stepping stone to the access point, but it just allows a little bit more green material that really is contiguous with other green material, so it will survive and flourish, rather than have a stripe, which we felt would be a real maintenance hassle and probably be degraded over time by oil dripping and just being covered by cars. So that really addresses all our comments, and I could certainly answer questions.
Okay. Actually, David has a few items.
Jan's talked about the elimination of the sidewalk down there at the west end. And this plan illustrates how we've sort of embellished this patio space and brought in more landscape. I mean, before there was really no landscape along the edge here. It was just open. And we provided the bollards just to protect the landscape from cars backing up. But we've actually added some additional palms. So now we have a total of 8 Washingtonia palms illustrated here. So we think this will have a nice create a nice vertical element and a nice overhead for the sort of the common area space. Jan's already described the sort of additional landscape that goes in between the building units themselves. This illustrates the vines on the fence coming out of those pockets. And the other change is that I think the last time we were here, we showed sort of a continuous hedge just to provide screening, but I think now with the wood fence and the vines on top of that, And I think we have an opportunity, and I think from a perspective of lower maintenance, we'll just have sort of a mix of understory. We have some additional trees that we're showing here, mostly between the units, and then some larger shrubs that'll sort of help provide a little bit of visual softening behind the fence along Punta Gorda. Again, I would call your attention to this sort of little open space here. We had to provide a flood control access at this location, but this is another sort of common little passive space that the residents would be able to use. The one other item I'd like to sort of chat with a bit is there was some comment from the board relative to relocating on site the existing, there's 3 existing Washingtonia robusta palms. I see that as somewhat problematic, and I just wanted to talk about it for a little bit. The palms, I mean, if the palms were an appropriate size, I would say, yeah, no problem. But you can see these palms are somewhat over 60 feet tall, and I think as a practical matter, I think they would be somewhat difficult to move successfully, particularly when one considers the fact that they would have to be dug up, stockpiled during the time of the construction, and then replanted. We are introducing 8 new robustas around that common space. I mean, I'm not one for removing palms unless I had to. I mean, they do provide sort of a skyline element, but I would point out to the board that we are replacing with 8 new palms, and I'm anticipating 15 to 20 foot brown trunks to start. So if the board wants to make them larger, they can do that, of course. But and I just think from a scale perspective, relative to this common space, I think a smaller palm would probably be more appropriate from a design point of view, and so I would have you consider that too. I think it would be problematic to try to transplant a palm this tall and this old.
Okay.
And that concludes my comments.
If you don't mind, it says tree sizes. Item 6 in general landscaping is critical. Tree sizes, when installed, should be sufficient to break up and enhance the project. Do you have any tree sizes listed? You talked about the palms being 15 to 20 foot brown trunk. Anything else with sizes?
I don't have them listed. I would imagine the trees would be a minimum of 24-inch box trees.
Okay.
All trees, which in the ground would probably be, 12 to 14 feet to begin with maybe a 3 or 4 foot canopy.
Okay.
The trees along, I think we're obligated, the sycamores along, I have to confirm this with creeks, but I suspect that creeks would want us to use, genetically appropriate material along here that would be propagated from, an appropriate source, as we are doing with the creek restoration as well. So this might be a little on the smaller side.
And these street trees, are they all new?
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
Yeah, we're actually removing. I had a conversation with Tim Downey about. I kicked it back. The street tree guy, Randy, and he suggested that we just take out the existing oak trees because they're in very poor condition.
Okay.
And replace them.
Thank you very much. I will close your presentation and open up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? Yes, thank you for reminding me. I have it. Ken Bortolza? Oh, I have only one pink slip, so if you want to speak, if you can put your name on a pink slip and get it to staff, and I'll call you next. Ken, do you want to come right up here? Can you turn on the mic for him?
Hi, I'm Ken Bortolazzo. I'm sorry I missed the first meeting. This is the second one, I understand, but I got the notice on a Friday and it was on a Monday. I was out of town. I'm the immediate neighbor. If you go around Punta Gorda onto Southbound Ontario and you didn't make the turn, you'd run into my house.
Do you have the silver sculptures?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
My main concern is parking, and I know it's not the
Address
purview.
the board, thanks.
It's not the purview of the board, but I'm sure that the owners and the architects want to be good neighbors on this. And I'm with the Neighborhood Watch down there, and parking has always been a big issue, especially with all the new construction that's going on. There's going to be that 3-story thing that's, I don't know how far along. It's gone through a couple of conceptual things here. And I don't know if the architect here have even gone and seen in an afternoon what the parking on the street is like. But to think that these units are only going to have one car, I think is really unrealistic. So that's my comment. I just thought, I know it's not in your purview, but it's something that I know that you pass along sometimes because it needs to come up maybe at this point before planning goes too far.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker, you can finish filling it out afterwards. Just hand it to me, that's fine. Anybody? Thank you. Have a seat.
Can I use this a little bit?
Actually, if you have your seat, and I'll point with my finger.
Okay.
We need to have you on the... If you have a seat over here, I'll point from this direction. And let me introduce you. You're Robert Mayo?
Mayo, correct.
All right.
I'm just trying to see where I am here. Okay. I'm a neighbor next door. I live in the other trailer park, which is a green mobile home trailer park. Right next door at 1200 Punta Gorda on the other side of Sycamore Creek. And what happened was when the freeway came through in 56, they built a giant underpass for Sycamore Creek there. Now, they also in Montecito put an underpass, so they've got Hot Springs and Cabrillo, their underpass at the Chevron station, and then Olive Mill, San Ysidro, and they've got all kinds of access to the beach. Well, in our situation, when we're here, we have to either go to Hot Springs and go around the bird refuge and go to East Beach that way, or we used to have to go back to Carpinteria Street. Now we can go use the Cacique underpass, the brand new one. And we come up to Cacique, and now we go under the freeway to Milpas and back to then we can go to the beach. And both ways, it takes you half an hour approximately to walk both ways. The bird refuge walk in Hot Springs a little longer. So what's happened over all the years is we've got 50 people here in this park here at Green Mobile Home. This was always opened. We would just walk down here to where the building currently is that's going to be torn down, and we would hop in right there at the creek, go under the freeway, pop up right there at the baseball diamond. And that was our simple way of getting to the beach in about 1 minute. And I just wanted to ask that still is available to us, because I'm noticing that they're fencing the creeks off.
We'll get back to that in a minute, but I'll ask that question of staff.
Okay, I just wanted to bring this point up now again initially so that you guys were aware that the neighborhood this is our way to East Beach in a minute.
Okay.
And it's been very, very convenient, and there's never been any problems, and we just want to be able to go to the beach simply. And we're so close, I mean, you can see the beach right there, and
Okay.
it's a long walk.
Well, thank you, Robert.
As far as parking, I have to back up my neighbor also. And I could easily see maybe where there's possibility of going 2 cars deep here.
We'll look into that. We'll ask the
'cause
question.
It is hard parking.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else from the public wishing to speak? If not, I'll close public comment and actually punt to staff on 2 items. Because I wasn't here last week, but I kind of know where the answer is going to go. But can you address parking briefly on how the parking was determined for the public comment that happened?
The applicant probably knows.
Okay,
I think
the applicant
Jan
will
might
do
be
that.
able to answer that.
And then staff, the comment about public access to the beach under the freeway, I remember we got an email, a letter.
That was me.
Correct, I've
Right.
gathered. Do you want to address that?
Well, I forwarded your comments to Public Works, and Pat Kelly wrote a response. I think they considered it years ago, but he said it's very difficult, very unfeasible, because Sycamore Creek is subject to very quick, like flash flooding, and it would be problematic for the city to kind of formalize a pedestrian walkway through there with head clearances under the bridges and all that, given the water levels and how they can fluctuate, and concerns that there might be people in there. So it seemed like that had been ruled out a long time ago as far as having a formal pedestrian access through there.
And I would say that what we're here to do is we're here to review the project that's in front of us, even though your comments are as valid as they are. It's not what's in front of us, and I'm glad staff actually got back to you with the city's perspective of how the decision was made. So if we go back to the applicant, can you start with the parking and how the parking count?
Okay, well, I'd like to tell everybody here that this is actually under the jurisdiction of the State of California Housing and Community Development. It would never happen today without jurisdiction by the state. So its layout and its configuration and the number of parkings is dictated by the specifics of that state permit, and they have jurisdiction. It would be impossible to comply with HCD requirements and park 2 cars. This has always been parked at this number with this number of units, and it's just continuing in that. Working with the city, because of what happened with the previous owners and the history of this, the developer is under a development agreement with the city and was negotiated to give the city purview, ABR, purview over the specific things that Betty enumerated when we were last here, which had to do with strictly landscaping, color, roof material, and the community building space. So everything else is kind of under the state permit and is really not on the table. I could appreciate the concerns about parking, but we're really just moving forward under that old permit.
That's a good answer. Thank you very much. So I'll turn it back to the board for questions of the applicant. Anybody can jump in at any time. Any questions?
How much street parking is available in Florida?
Use your mic on. It's important.
How much street parking is available in Florida and parallel?
Stephanie, I don't know the exact number. I know that there is parking along that curb, and in all my visits to the site, on a pretty regular basis, I parked on Punta Gorda on the project site side of the street.
It's available on both sides, actually.
Looks like it.
During the day.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one question. So one of the things we had also discussed, I guess it didn't make it into the minutes, was turning that common patio area into a grass area.
Right.
Open space grass area. I was just wondering if you obviously made the decision not to do that, and why? What was your reasoning on that?
We batted that one around quite a bit, and we felt that, to address that concern, we would embellish the area, but we felt the patio space as a usable hard surface would be far more valuable to the residents as a gathering area, a little place to barbecue, than trying to make a green plantable space. We felt we had enough along the creek. We have a fairly significant green space over here that we needed that hardscape one. So, I thought David did a good job of adding the plant material, embellishing it, and then also embellishing the architectural character of the community building itself to address that comment.
Okay. Questions from anybody else? If not, we'll roll in.
I have a couple minor questions. Will there be planting in the parkway between the sidewalk and the...
Yes.
That'll just be low. And then the palms that you've proposed, are they to be varying heights? Are you thinking all one?
Oh, it could be varied.
Probably
I
vary.
would say between 15 and 20-foot trunks, ground trunks.
Okay. That's it then. Questions?
Okay. I was going to add one thing, and a little history on the discussion of that. When David and I were discussing the existing palms and the new ones proposed, he was somewhat against the existing in that they were at a scale. He felt that these would bring a level of intimacy to residents, bring it down, and kind of relate better to the texture and grain of the development. So that's kind of where that came from.
Alrighty. So actually, they're not to be relocated. Yes, and then we'll move to comments.
What is called for in the vine or the pocket where the fence opens up?
Stephanie, your mic.
What is proposed to be planted in between the gaps in the fence where it opens up, where they've broken up the fence? There's along Punta Gorda.
Well, there would be a
Yeah,
flowering vine in
flowering
those pockets.
Okay.
And so ultimately, the fence would be covered with vines.
So this would be like a 5-gallon trumpet vine that would go both directions.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think ideally it wouldn't totally obscure the fence, but you'd get that contrast between it trailing along the top for a third of the surface area of the fence.
Okay. So let's go to comments. Any board member? Chris?
I think, to me, everything looks good, and the applicant has responded to all of our requests. I guess the only one thing that jumps out at me is the location of the trash enclosure. at the little Y there. It's sort of a dominating feature. And I know you don't have much room to place it anywhere else. I'm just wondering if you studied any other possible locations that...
Well, actually...
Actually, we're in comments,
Oh, okay.
so we're just going to
Yeah, I
put
guess
that in
that
the
would have been a
minutes.
question.
3. There's 2 more.
Yeah, and there's
And
two
there's
more,
two more.
right. So I guess that would be my comment. Is it'd be nice if there was a better location for that.
Comments from other people? Gary?
Yeah, I'll make a comment. I spent some time looking from other locations, the freeway and the other side of the freeway, at the palm trees, and I kind of feel like I'm going to disagree that I think that they do add a feature of skyline trees towards the freeway and the entrance of Santa Barbara that's fairly important. I can agree with the applicant that at a scale of where the community space is, that it's appropriate for him to have those trees lowered at that, and that does seem to make sense. But when I look at it from a city point of view or from a driving down point of view, the loss of those skyline trees are I feel that may be unnecessary. So I would be more in favor of saving those and relocating them on site.
Okay. Thank you for doing your research. Anybody else?
I don't have any different comments other than just appreciate the effort that was made to address the city, the board's comments from last time.
Okay.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, I agree with previous comments. I think the applicants have made a good response, positive response to our comments, and have done a lot with limited means and the parameters they're working under. To throw out a suggestion regarding the existing palms, I don't know if perhaps maybe the 2 corners could be a possible relocation point that would be out of the way of construction, but in my mind, it's not a deal breaker.
Okay. Stephanie, comments?
I would agree with Keith that the palms for me are not an absolute, that they grow quickly. You can also specify varying species throughout this project that grow faster, or some are taller and some are not as tall, to keep it in scale. So I wouldn't put that requirement to this project.
If that's all, I want to ask Chris, actually, your feedback on the palm trees and whether or not you've driven by and taken a look at it since the last meeting.
I haven't seen these, but I know what an undertaking it is to move a 60-foot palm, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. So it costs you a good deal of money. It's not guaranteed that it's going to thrive in its new location either. So to me, I wouldn't place that caveat on this as a requirement.
We actually had a good discussion, and we'll come to a decision, but I'm glad we had this discussion. So is there any other discussion about the project, or we can go into a motion? And the question is if the project is ready for project design approval, and then if the next step would be full board or consent, and what items for them to address.
Chair, I'll make a motion. So
Okay.
this would be for project design approval, return to consent for final, with a comment to further study potential locations for the single trash location to find a less conspicuous spot.
Okay. And if that's it, is there someone who wants to second that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Kurt. Discussions? Chris, you'll be reviewing this on consent. Would there be a reason to put down the box sizes or the type of palm trees in the minutes, just for record placeholding? He volunteered, it would be 8, and I don't know, Washingtonian palms that are between 15 and 20 foot brown trunk.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be advantageous to have in the minutes?
Yeah.
And then you also volunteered that the trees would be a minimum of 24-inch box, except for the ones that are along Sycamore Creek, which would be dictated by the Creeks Division. So if we can add those two items to the motion, if that's all right with Keith. All right. We have a first and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We could add to the motion that when it comes back for final approval, that the elevations not, when it comes back for final approval, that the elevations along Punta Gorda not show the trees so that the buildings can be easily seen.
Okay. Just when you draw the elevation here with trees and without trees.
Got it.
All right.
Okay.
Add that to the motion. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'll abstain because I missed the last meeting.
Okay.
And I'll announce that there's a 10-day appeal period for this, for our action today. Moving on to the next item, which is item 2, which is 1085 Coast Village Road. You can have this set, actually, because they...
Okay.
We should keep it this color version. And that you can keep.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Have yourself a good day. All right, 1085 Coast Village Road.
Take the center out. Okay.
Use the set that Tony has.
We have the minutes. So, Sir Chili.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read through the minutes real fast, or do you want to walk through? How do you want to go about it?
Well, we're more here for the formality of getting project design approval, and I think most of
Okay.
the comments are things we'll address when we get to final, because they're like details and things like that.
Well, this project was last heard 2 weeks ago? Oh, no, wait, July 25th, 2011. I got you now. Let me read through the motion. Item 1, site planning, massing, and landscaping are fine. 2, provide details about the roof tile material. 3, consider adding faux corbel at the column supports to the existing canopy. 4, study the landscaping at the fence along Highway 101 for breaking up the horizontal line of the fence. 5, provide building details to show design style. All right, this was a year ago. You want to explain where you have been?
I'm Kevin Dumaine from Project Architect for Design Arc, and this is my client, Bob Olner.
Okay.
Well, we've been on hold for the most part with the architectural drawings. We've recently had the Planning Commission approval for the project. It gets a coastal development plan, and also it was recently appealed to City Council over the pump flick. So all that's behind us. We've slowly gotten started again on the architectural drawings. There's some updates to the elevations here to show you, and essentially we wanted to move ahead, hopefully get project. What do we call it now?
Project design approval. Just to touch base, are there only 2 people that haven't seen this before? So Stephanie and Kirk haven't seen this, but the 4 of us have. So this would be perhaps preliminary project design approval. So why don't you go through and explain the changes to the 4 of us who know the project, and the other 2 will catch up.
Let's start with the site plan page then. This is the existing gas station on Coast Village Road for the Chevron. We have the Highway 101 right here. And the plan is to make improvements and generate other sources of revenue.
Actually, this
Tony, is this the... This is the one that's got the... It's askew.
This says 6/18/12.
There was a reference file problem. Let's see if this one's better. Oh, this is easier to read.
We have to go off the ones that Tony already has.
Oh.
But for now, we'll look at this, but we have to compare with what Tony has on his record.
He should have this too. So the gray box is the footprint of the existing gas station. And so the triangle off the back is going to be knocked down, and then there'll be a new car wash along the back fence. Entrance to the car wash will be this from over here. There's room for a couple of cars to queue. It's the length of the car wash is just over 100 feet, and that allows enough room that you can get all the different systems and more efficiently recover the water. So you can get, you're looking at trying to recover about 75% of the water using the car wash.
If you don't mind, I'd like to go over the ones that Tony has. And this date was 7/2/12.
Because we
Okay.
we had
7/2.
submitted this set, went on hold because of the city council appeal.
Okay. So let's actually make this disappear. Fold this one aside.
Oh, good. So we were talking about the car wash tunnel. And then in the front of the gas station, there would be an addition out to the front to add a little bit more retail space. And then you can see as the roof, kind of a hint of the roof plan there, we have a tower that kind of links the two volumes. Over in the center of the site, we have the existing canopy for the pump islands. And we'll walk through the elevations and show you some of the changes.
Okay.
And we'll get to the...
Chair, I'm going to have to step down from this item. I just
Arcadia.
realized looking at it.
Arcadia Studios.
You're good, but I just remember.
All right, not a problem.
The quarter-inch plan, you can see that it's the retail store here, storage in the back, the car wash equipment, restrooms. The entrance is here where we have the tower element, long car wash tunnel, trash enclosure, and an office. Tower element's a little bit taller, which allows us to sort of join the two different masses to get, link them together. We chamfer the corners to kind of break down the volume and the massing a little bit.
What's the roof materials? It was one of our comments here.
The building is kind of a lightweight steel building, so what we're proposing to do is using flat tiles.
Clay or cementitious?
They may have to be cementitious, but they'd be a terracotta color. And so in the neighborhood, we have multiple buildings that do have flat terracotta colors, so we're kind of going along with that theme. The ridges would be a barrel tile.
Like a clay tile?
Yeah.
Okay.
Overall, we're trying not to add a lot of weight to it, because we want to work with the existing structure, and carry that over as far as possible, and then, demo from here over and build new, but, maintain the existing framing and not introduce extra weight and new improvements.
Okay.
The existing slope would continue on towards the street so that we get kind of a lower eave condition facing the street, which brings the height down. On the north, the Coast Village Road elevation, and on the east elevation, we have freehand drawings that we're kind of in the process of refining and developing the building. Since it was last year, there's a few new elements to show. And we're going to introduce a projecting base. We have a little sort of cupola element. Hopefully, get some vents into there. The chimney element will now go to a bishop's hat. It allows us to sort of extend it back and meet the offset condition to this roof element here. Use a series of two-piece clay tile, parapet details along these elements of flat roofs. And it's more or less very similar to what we've had before. It's just starting to get a little bit more evolved. We've added some new windows to the bathrooms on the end. We're hoping to get a little window over here into the car wash tunnel if we can make that work. And tower has gotten a little more subtle. These chamfers used to be a little bit bigger. Now we kind of tighten them up. They seem to improve the overall proportions.
Okay.
This is the freeway side where we're talking about, planning out a hedge condition along, or a vine along the building. The main building is held back from the property line. The buttresses go to the property line. And then the east elevation being the other hand view. I've introduced a new window here into one of the restrooms. Kind of just sort of see the articulation. We're developing a little more refinement to the finials where we have them. Just kind of it's slowly starting to progress and develop. We've drawn up the canopy. So currently what we have is a kind of a concrete shake out there. It's a brown shake. So after this has been point of discussion in the previous meetings, we're going to take off those existing brown colored shakes and go with the flat terracotta colored roof tiles so that the canopy in the building will match.
Okay.
It will repeat the barrel tile.
One second. Okay.
There have been some improvements on the canopy in recent years, so we didn't want to do too much extensive work there. So we can change out the roof so it matches. On the columns, we want to have some dated-looking slump stone. We want to come back and do plaster over those, get the color to match the rest of the building. So that's sort of the concept.
Is that a horizontal bar
Yeah, it's existing.
on both sides? Oh, here it is.
It runs through there.
Okay. Gotcha. That's fine.
I don't know enough about the structure to see whether or not we can eliminate that. I imagine we have to keep it.
It's
Maybe
probably structural.
sections are starting to develop.
Okay. Overall height noted is under 25 feet, 24.9.
Yeah, I think we're a couple inches taller than we were previously. Some as-built, site surveys have revealed that the drawings had indicated what's the right word? More of a standing seam roof directly on purlins, but they actually didn't build it with purlins. They did more of a sandwich panel, so we're a couple inches taller.
Okay.
Civil and landscape plans haven't changed since previous.
And landscaping hasn't changed since the last one.
No.
Okay.
So many of those comments in there, those are things we're planning on addressing later on for a final review.
All righty. With that, I will open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this project? Seeing none, I will close public comment, go back to staff. Does staff have any comments? If not, back to the board for questions of the applicant. I actually have one question for you. Item 3 was to consider adding faux corbel to the column supports of the existing canopy. Was this something that you considered or something that you just didn't think about?
We've considered it, but we would prefer to not do it. We think the canopy looks very clean and simple on its own,
Okay.
and that we're not real thrilled with the corbels we've seen on other gas stations around town. So we'd like to just sort of do a plaster column. We could certainly add a base element to it.
All right. And then there was another comment here that said, study landscaping at the fence along the 101 freeway to break up the horizontal line of the fence. That wasn't addressed?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I'll recommend that we roll that over to the next meeting. I'll start with Chris and Gary, and then I'll get to the other two. Do you guys have any questions?
Planning Commission comments?
Perfect. Staff, was there any planning commission that pertained to the architecture aesthetics from the planning commission?
I'll go look for it.
Okay. All right. Kurt, do you have any? It's the first time for you, so
So the underside of the canopy, the existing Pump Island canopy, that will also remain that shiny metal?
Yes.
Painted metal. It's painted.
Okay. It's got a little reflective quality there in the photographs, but. And is there a landscape plan too? Did I miss?
there is, but they haven't changed it since 2011, so it's the same one we reviewed at the previous board.
Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Stephanie?
So this roof is being dictated by your ridge line here?
Yes. With the angled geometries, we wanted to have the tower element a little bit taller so that it gives a dive for that ridge coming in, and then also kind of a clean way to.
But the ridge line was somewhat arbitrary, was it not? You said to try to get it lower here?
No, that ridge line is set.
Oh, okay, it's
So-
existing. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
The body of the building, kind of to the east or left side of that drawing, is all an existing structure.
So you're starting from the existing ridge line?
Yeah.
Okay. That was my question.
Paul, did you want me to point out, there are the two mods, I can elaborate on that.
I actually, for Kirk's benefit, probably so.
Okay.
But remember them. Kirk, when you have a minute, Stephanie? This project involved two modifications. The board gave its okay, and I think you got them all blessed, but still, let's go through them briefly.
The first mod is, and this is common to other service stations, is you technically don't count the vehicles at the pump islands. However, most of the customers in the stores are parking at the pump islands. So what we did is we got a modification, which is similar to other past modifications, other projects, to have a reduction in the parking based on the inclusion of those cars. The second modification was we're bringing the cars this way, kind of in a clockwise pattern as opposed to, well,
However,
counterclockwise. And so, because that gave us space to queue them up over here out of the circulation, so the whole site can kind of flow better. But that meant that we had to have the little kiosk where you give your ticket number, punch in, inside the setback. So we got a modification granted to put that there. And so what we're proposing is just keep the box as small as possible and kind of discreetly kind of have it tied into the landscaping as opposed to building a monolith around it. And then there's a second location that we wanted to get approved at this, when we got this first modification, have it included in the same mod. If this station becomes so popular that we have concerns about cars backing up, one of the pinch points to traffic is getting through the kiosk. So there would be the opportunity to put in a second kiosk to kind of speed up the flow of cars going through the car wash. So that's, to have those in the front setback is the modification.
okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to quickly go through the Planning Commission. Tree replacement, said the jacaranda trees shall be replaced within the right-of-way and shall be fenced and protected during construction. Tree protection, backflow device, trash enclosure provisions, lighting is permitted. Perimeter flood lighting shall be hooded and shielded, and that's it. So I think we're fine. Let's see if there's any other questions. If not, we'll go to comments.
Okay.
It said the existing jacaranda tree shall be replaced within the public right-of-way and shall be fenced and protected during construction. I believe there was a very large tree here that we removed. Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Let's go to the landscape plan and just tell us what you came up with as the alternate. It's the, Maybe
The
we
other
should
plan
go back to
actually
that. There you go.
Currently, the driveway is closer to the street corner. And there are 3 street trees, and the jacaranda that's right here is the one in question. So, after working with Tom Belay, we had some meetings with him, and he represented the Montecito Association. We developed a scheme where this driveway moved away from the street corner over to here, so we had to relocate this tree.
Relocate or replace?
Well, the city arborist didn't like the relocation concept, so we're replacing it.
What size? Yep.
48-inch box.
Okay. And this quantity is 1, so 48-inch box. And it should be put in place and fenced during construction. Okay?
So is that comment basically saying that the tree should be planted prior to commencement of construction, and that during construction, or does it specify?
That seems a little awkward.
It doesn't specify, but it says to be protected during construction, implying that it's planted probably within weeks of when the other one's removed. But
Okay.
the applicant can clarify that with the street tree committee. Other questions?
Question about the trash enclosure placement.
Yes.
Don't feel like that would be in the way of cars parked at the island when the garage is picked up.
When does your trash service?
Presently, it's twice a week, and it's pretty quick. I mean, they're in and out very fast. And width-wise, I haven't actually paced it out to see if the truck would be blocking the island or not.
Just seems in a prominent position.
Right over there.
Our only other options are really at the far end of the site, and we would lose cars, and we wouldn't have the ability to kind of, have such an accessible pathway to it. So it seems that it's the better of the compromises. We're actually a little bit extra space in here. There's enough room. You can bring in the tanker truck. He comes off the freeway, pulls a hairpin turn, kind of makes a swing through here. So we should have the ability to roll out a dumpster and service a car at the pump island.
Yeah, I believe there's enough room for both.
The question having to do with the trash. In the Planning Commission, it says that the trash enclosure provisions should be a minimum of 50% total capacity for recycling and all that kind of stuff. Is this of ample size to address what Planning Commission was asking for?
Yeah, we had to make it a little bit bigger when those conditions came out.
Okay, but it works.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, let's move to comments from the board members on the project, and to say whether or not we feel it's ready for project design approval, and moving on to full board or to consent. If no one wants to jump in first, I will jump in first. Okay.
I don't have any comments about the main building. I think it looks really very nicely designed. And overall, I would say the project seems to me to be ready for project design approval. I do feel like the canopy is an anomaly now, because you have such a nice main building that just plastering the columns is not sufficient, that it needs to have some detailing, significant detailing that ties it in to the architecture of the new building. And then my other comment is that it seems to me that the landscaping along this strip here where cars are going to be queuing for the car wash is very important. And I did glance at the landscape plan. There's minimal information. Looks like there's 3 existing trees along there. But I think a hedge of whatever maximum size is allowable, or shrubs that would help to shield the view of the cars from the street would be important along there. My comments.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Kurt that the project's ready to move along, and there's some issues with the canopy. I was wondering, I was going to ask as a question, but I didn't quite get there. Let's see if we got an elevation of that canopy. There we go. I was wondering what this material was. I was going to ask that on questions.
I think it's a steel beam.
It's a steel beam. Okay. Yeah, I kind of feel like this is still a little cold, and it really doesn't tie in with the building. I appreciate that you're adding the tile onto it, but I see things like this steel beam that comes across here that can be maybe some wood elements or something that could tie in with the building, and maybe your suggestions of adding some plinths onto these columns might help decorate it, maybe even a small capital. But something that brings it a little bit more into the architecture. I understand that it's still going to be tall, it's still going to be stilty. There's not a lot you can do about that. But and I'm not sure what the color is on the fascia, if that was going to be changed or not, or if that's going to stay blue. But that matters as well.
If you don't mind, I'm going to dovetail on that and just say that I think the project is ready for design approval, but I feel like we can't give it to you today, and the leverage is because we need to have the canopy addressed. And this is something that we've talked about from day one, and that because the other building is so beautiful now, you're going to have to do something to this building, and to say that it's going to be addressed in the minutes at the next meeting isn't sufficient enough to say that you need to show us how you're going to address the canopy building and make it match the rest of the buildings that you have on the campus. And then I think the project is ready for project design approval. But until you do something significant to the canopy, I feel that this project is not ready to move to the next square. And that's from my perspective.
I would agree.
Okay. So with that, does someone want to formulate a motion, or do you want me to Okay.
Since it's my first time viewing the project, I'm going to defer to Paul's comment, because there were comments about the canopy made previously. It doesn't sound like they were incorporated yet. So would you like a 2-week continuance, or how long would you like to be continued to come back and with some more study on the canopy?
I think that would be appropriate.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion for a 2-week continuance with the comments to provide additional remodeling of the existing canopy to bring it more in conformance with the architecture of the new proposed, or the remodeled main building.
Okay.
And of course, you're welcome to bring in additional information about the main building as well if you wanted to start doing some detailing, architectural detailing or whatever to help move the project along. In the meantime, that's of course welcome.
A second?
I'll second that, and also under discussion would be to forward the comments from the last meeting in terms of the landscape comments. I believe there
The
were a
item
few.
4 from the previous meeting.
And also the Planning Commission recommendations.
Planning Commission recommendations.
And I'm going to add one more comment too, is if you could also provide more information regarding existing and proposed landscaping along the
Car wash queue area.
Thank you.
And if we can forward up item 2 from the previous meeting, which is to provide details about the roof material. And that really goes down to that you need to do your number crunching on what you're removing and what you can propose, and not have to redo the structural. And then that's going to dictate for the weight of the roof material. And then if you can bring examples of that, because we really won't want to see something really thin. Whatever roof material you're planning on doing here, because that's also going to be at the main building, or maybe they'll be different. But the previous minutes we talked about to bring us information about the roof material, and that hasn't been seen yet. So with that, any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
It's going to be a great project. Does someone want to get Keith from outside? Oh, there he is. We're going to move on to item 3, which is 1198 Coast Village Road. And this was the one that was heard 2 weeks ago? I mean...
Yes.
Okay. And I wasn't here, so I'll just be abstaining, but directing everybody. Thank you. Since there's only 4 items to the minutes, I'm going to read through them real fast. Removal of the cypress tree is not acceptable unless justified by an arborist report. 2, the proposed architectural style of the patio covers is not consistent with the existing building. 3, study removing or screening the existing roofed equipment and trash and storage areas at Middle Road. 4, provide landscape plan for the front yard along Middle Road and other proposed new plantings. And for all other proposed plantings. If I hear your name for the record?
Yeah, good afternoon. Greg Schmant, designer.
Sam Mathis, landscape architect.
Great.
And Denise Alec. I work for the tenant. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background.
Your mic's not on, but now it is.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a little background. The Peabody's restaurant was put up for sale a couple years ago, and we recently purchased it in May of this year. And we purchased the restaurant. We're the tenant. We're not the owner of the building. We're the tenant. We have less than a 4-year lease on the building. And we had it inspected. There's an awful lot of deferred maintenance. And so we needed to bring it up to code, to make it ADA compliant, and hopefully preserve the character of the restaurant and its history and its importance in the community. And so we have had the tree looked at. We had Peter Wynn go out and look at it. Here's his arborist report.
Pass it down to Chris.
He basically says that the tree has been failing in health for the last 25 years, and he feels it's a liability to employees, the public, patrons. He believes it's heavily decayed, and it's a liability. When we were looking at the building and what we needed to do to make it ADA compliant, to bring it up to code, there's an awful lot of interior work that needs to be done that lessen the square footage inside. And so really what we would like to accomplish is an outdoor oven, which is acceptable to the Environmental Health Services Group, and outdoor year-round seating. And so that's the impetus for the design that we are proposing.
Great.
So I bring that up to Greg.
So after our last meeting, and now that we know that we can, the tree is a liability, I went back and reworked this area a little bit to make it a little bit more compatible and using more of the style that's existing. So basically, I had to pull this wall in a little bit to get enough height inside and push this back a little bit to get a little more planting. We'll change this concrete sidewalk to more of a brick sidewalk, make a little recess with a little bench seating for maybe some overflow, give a little more space back there. And then going with the brick patio, the bar, and developing an area in here. There was an old band stage, if you will, but we'd like to get some more seating. So basically, this is just existing plan the way it is now. It's the larger scale of what we just kind of talked about, but basically these are walls that I'll put shingles on, and this would be a new fence that replaced the existing.
And the only reason we're doing that is the existing fence
Yeah, it's
is
falling
heavily
down.
termite damaged.
Yeah. And basically, this dashed line here represents the new covered roof area. Actually, probably, I don't know if we want to see I think I blew right by the roof plan. But the roof plan basically keeping the same ridge height and the same line, bringing that out the same 4 and 12 pitch, and I extended the trellis to hood it a little bit more and keeping it more compatible. So I just did a section through the patio cover, and it basically will keep these same beams. Basically, they're beam ends right now. I'll just run those all the way through. Have some nice roof rafters, the same comp roof, and that will stop right here. And then I'll extend the trellis over the patio that's uncovered to make a nice little area out there. But I'm only 6'9" in the back here in the bar area. But I do have a 2-foot counter, so we'll have enough headroom. So it keeps it a little more low profile. I took a comment to drop this structure down a little bit and took the roof off of it and made just more an open trellis. So we could, hide the heaters, and that actually brings in some of the architecture, which is evident here. And you can see the extending the trellis here. I brought these little wing walls out just to kind of hold up the structure, and then also could add some of the shingles to try to match everything. I'm looking from Coast Village Road. Not a whole lot changes here except for the new trellis element here. And we took off the existing roof structure that was holding all the equipment for the kitchen, which will be replaced. Since we're moving our kitchen, will be on this side. So I kind of just piggybacked off the side of this one and had a little element there.
Would that be seen on
Correct.
this side?
Mm-hmm. So that's basically right behind us, going perpendicular.
So this guy is right here.
Mhm.
That's this.
Yeah, and the other one's kind of behind it.
Yeah, this
Correct.
is
This is existing.
And that's existing,
Yeah, this
too.
will be
That's
piggyback.
this.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out where this is.
It's going behind. Yeah, going
It's
behind
the
us.
same, almost the same width. Okay.
No, I'm gonna go a little smaller. We don't need as much equipment as they had before. From Middle Road, basically, most of all this is existing. So basically, here's the end of the gable end right now. So I'd like to extend that out over the area. And I put a little trellis here for an entrance to kind of lower it a little bit. I'd like to pick up some skylights if I could in the bar area, just in case it gets a little dark. We're going to hide the existing equipment on that flat roof with a new element there. I have a chimney stack for the pizza oven. And then last but not least, the north elevation looking from the parking lot. Pulling these beams all the way through, making this more of a solid section, using the shingle siding to match. Trying to pull basically that same gable look. People seem to like that. And I just put a small trellis down to hood it a little. And just adding a 6-foot fence to replace the existing one. And that little gap that I have that I didn't have before gives us an area to plant, and I'll just put another fence to kind of screen that little area. And then
Any questions on the architecture? We can go into the landscape.
some of the
a little
screening.
Eventually get to the trash and storage areas along Middle Road.
bit. Yeah, which
You want to
is,
sneak over here?
sure, I can do it from here.
Okay.
That's this little area right here, Paul. It's already a fenced-in enclave, and it's going to stay that way. We're screening it.
Where's the property line?
It's the whole thing is a property.
The motel.
It's existing.
It's
That's the
existing
right of way.
now. And this is a parking spot right here that's existing. Existing ash tree that it backs up against. These pictures might give you some better idea of how it sits up in this little area right here, the top of the slope. To start on that side, which the Middle Road side is really where we're going to be doing some improvements on the landscaping. as well as the surrounding area of the whole building. But we're going to be planting out that trash area with a large evergreen shrub, Pittosporum variegata. And then we are going to rebuild this set of stairs that is right here, but we're going to remove this set of stairs. This is a very awkward, canted, kind of double fall line.
Just get it, the TV guy can zoom in. This one you're being removed?
This one we're removing, which is right off the corner, which kind of accesses and opens up and looks at what we feel is the service part of the building. So we want to take that away and screen it. So those stairs will be removed. These will be rebuilt. These will be kind of brick on sand with landscape tie, which will allow access to this side from the bottle shop and from people down Middle Road. We're going to cut off access, which is kind of coming through here now, but it's in poor condition. You can just tell right now it needs a lot of landscape and maintenance and regrading. So this whole area we're going to screen. I like to put a new jacaranda tree at this corner. See how that would sit nicely on this corner. We still allow sight lines and, of course, traffic, regulations in terms of seeing and viewing. But then we'd replant this slope with rosemary, and we'd also plant probably tobuchina and/or this area. I'm thinking we repeat this same Juniperus tomentosa, the Hollywood juniper that comes along the entire frontage of Coast Village Road. So we'd get a little continuity from Middle Road and Coast Village Road. This plan, it's what we had looked at a week ago before we'd really gotten into the issues of the tree, and you've seen the arborist letter now, and we're concerned about not only its current health, but any little patio, even brick on pavers that we were thinking of proposing in this scheme. So the tree is shown in this site plan, but the intent is to do just what Greg has shown you with removing that tree, replacing 1, 2, possibly another tree in this little area right here that would be a small tree. One of Peter's concerns was that this big ash tree and the cypress are competing, and this is in a state of decline anyway, so this one will be the dominant tree. We could put a small Cercis forest pansy or something in this area to dress up the back. Along the back area, I show planting that would be vines and buffer, as well as a walkway would be maintained for the cars to come into the new entrance. We'd be improving the planting in this area, which right now is, again, as Denise had mentioned, just deferred maintenance. It's in bad shape, and we want to replant this with agave and alstroemeria and some nice trailing geranium. So much like what we'll be doing inside with these planters, we'd be upgrading all the planting inside and gaining new seeding internal, and then we'd be planting a vine such as a stephanotis or something on the back wall of this entry area. Right now it's fencing, as you can see, and the entrance is kind of obscure on the side. We'll be pulling the entrance a little more centered on the parking lot, but all the fencing would be screened from the outside. That's what we're proposing as far as the landscape so far. This access, which goes straight down here to Middle Road, is what we're going to be taking away. So people will come down to the service and into the big walk-in, and trash will come out of the kitchen, but then that'll be cut off so that it won't be, access right by the kitchen. So that's our landscape concept.
Great. Anything else for your presentation?
I think that takes care of it.
Great. I'll open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment on this project? Seeing none, I will close public comment, return to the board for questions of the applicant. Or actually, does staff have any comments?
Just that I spoke to Tim Downey today, and he reviewed the plans and our risk report, and he concurs with the conclusions in the report. And I sent this to Chris today, too, earlier today.
Great. That's very good. Thank you for putting that in. Questions of the applicant?
I guess I have one quick question. I guess, it's unfortunate the tree is is going, and it really adds to the charm, I think, of this, the whole corner, and gives it that sort of woodland, almost Monterey type feeling. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity anywhere else. I'm not really seeing one, but you have a better sense of the property. Is there anywhere we could maybe add a younger cypress that over time would maybe fill that void?
Chris, we can study that. I think along that middle road area could be a possibility. I think we're proposing a jacaranda along that stretch to the north. There's a possibility that could be an addition. So we'd like to reserve to study that a little bit with this plan coming up to the actual real site plan that we'll be using. I think there is some room for potentially that to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Kurt?
I don't have any questions.
I actually have two questions. I didn't hear this. I didn't review the tape either. Does the city have no plans of having a sidewalk here, or they're part of their, sidewalk master improvement? Is there any indication that they want to have a sidewalk along Middle Road?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
You know anything about that, Tony? Okay. And then the second question is the trash enclosure, which is actually right here. It's actually in the city right away. Nowadays, we have to make them larger for all these XYZ reasons. Will this have to change in size? Is this existing location large enough to handle your recycling and your green and compostables and all that stuff?
It seems to be adequate for now. I mean, I don't foresee us needing any more space.
I think one of the reasons for that is we're not going to have as much frozen, prepackaged food items. A lot of it will be fresher, and so a lot of the packaging that typically goes into that bin we won't have. We're reusing a lot of the farmers market bins. You go get them and then you return the crates.
Yeah, I don't know how they determine their square footages, but they're pretty particular on their sizes of trash enclosures.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Those are my two questions. Anybody else have questions? If not, we'll move to comments. Oh.
Yeah, I want to know what the materiality of the pizza oven fireplace is.
I think I have a long brochure up there. It's actually a stainless steel. You want to see that? It's a stainless steel with a clad.
Once you're done looking at it, I want to put it for the TV camera guy.
Is that what you're asking?
Well,
Just
the
wasn't sure.
structure that will be housing it.
It's a self-contained unit.
It's a self-contained unit you're going to have on the ground, and then you're just going to pipe up through
Correct, and we'll just clad it with something to make it visually attractive on the inside.
Okay. And then it goes through, and then there's the chimney above.
Correct.
Okay. Questions from somebody else?
Sure. Could you just go over the equipment locations on the roof plan one more time? It just
It was over here.
Yeah. Basically, since we're moving, the kitchen was located here originally, we're moving it back. And from what I understand from the chef and his needs for the kitchen, there's basically going to be a lot less required exhaust. He's an induction versus deep fryers and things like that. So our basically only exhaust will be in this area. So I'm hoping to keep this as minimal as possible and just try to piggyback on the existing structure that's here and keep it on this side of the ridge if I can, to try to house what I can. But I need to get a little bit more information on some of the stuff. But that's in a nutshell trying to keep it all right there.
and so some of the existing exposed equipment, that'll all be removed?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good question. Anything else? If not, we'll move to comments. You're on.
Really appreciate the rework that you did of the architectural design. I think it's vastly improved. It goes very nicely with the existing building. It's seamless, so I really appreciate you making that effort and making the revision. And I also appreciate the landscaping improvements and all that you're doing along the landscape areas along the street, removing the existing stairway and adding more landscaping. I just think all of that's fabulous. It's really going to affect, in a very positive way, the whole Coast Village road appearance along the front of the building. I concur with Chris's question about the cypress, that it would be nice to add, to pull back in a cypress, a younger cypress, into the landscape plan. I also know that, having recently done a couple commercial remodels, that they will ask you to make the trash enclosure ADA compliant, which is new. This is like 2010 requirement now that you have to has to be wheelchair compliant within the enclosure. So you may be looking at some revisions there.
Maybe a little bit bigger there.
And you also have to have accessible
Path of travel from the kitchen.
Put it over
Yeah,
here.
that would
Put it over there, get it out of setback in the right of way.
Yeah. And then, handicap parking as well. Looks like there may be some revisions with that, but, I think those can be handled as the project moves along. So, again, thanks very much.
Anybody else? Comments?
Yeah, I just want to concur with Kurt's comments, and I think the project's ready to move along in the process.
Good. All right.
I appreciate the changes. I think it's quite sad to be losing the cypress. I know that I always enjoy it, but it's a bit disappointing reading the arborist report. So I know it's we need to have a ceremony for such a tree. I would, and it's kind of sad to say that reading the arborist report, he mentions that had it been in a residential area or not a public area, that it would probably be okay to remain. But I would agree with Chris. I think that maybe having a younger cypress come into this area would be beneficial. So I would look forward to seeing that addition into this plan. There's one thing that bothered me with the original construction of this, and it's continuing with the new proposal, and that would be the shingle-cladded chimney that you're proposing. And it happens to be one of the things that I always point out, that chimneys and fireplaces are not made out of wood. And it's a very minor issue, given that there are already existing ones on this building. I would say that it's a different situation, but I certainly would prefer that new chimney, if possible, to clad it with materials that are already in use on that building, like you're using brick. There's brick for the flooring, and there's brick benches. Perhaps that's a good location for a brick chimney. That would be the only comments. I think it's ready to move.
Okay. Question for the board, making a motion, or whoever decides, is it project design approval and return back in progress, or return to final on consent? Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for indefinite continuance back to the full board with project design approval and following comments. Consider adding a tree in the newly landscaped areas, a cypress tree in the newly landscaped areas. That's it.
All right. Is there someone who would like to second that?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chair. And if it's okay with the maker of the motion, just add, verify the trash enclosure requirements and locations as acceptable to city agency.
Sure.
And if it's okay with the makers of the motion, I'd like to add to the motion that the applicant do like a preliminary kitchen design, so you know what your rooftop equipment requirements would be prior to coming back to the board, so that what we're reviewing is what will be necessary to screen the equipment. Satisfactory? Okay. Any other discussions from board members? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? And I'll abstain, even though I contributed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful project, great food.
It'd be good to get it active again.
And actually, you guys can keep this set of drawings.
Okay, thank you.
We are on the last item of the agenda tonight, which is item 4, which is 1320 East Gutierrez Street. We are 7 minutes early. Do you want to wait?
Oh, I'm good.
All right, then let's go for it. We're 7 minutes early.
That's unheard of. Actually, these are a little revised. But it's the same project. Nothing changed, like zoning wise.
I have your name for the record.
Mark Mirando, agent for the owner, Jose Flores.
Was this heard 2 weeks ago?
No, about maybe a couple months ago.
A couple months ago. Oh, okay.
Or more.
Good. Let me get the minutes and we'll see where we're at. Let's see where we are. You want me to read through them, or do you want to go through them? How do you want to go through the minutes? There's 11 items. How about I read it and you show me how we answered it? Item 1 is the overall mass bulk scale of the proposed additions appear acceptable. 2, provide footprints and approximate fenestration locations of adjacent properties where visual impacts are likely on the site plan.
Correct. That's on towards the back. We did a study because fundamentally this project is a little duplex, about 1,150 top and bottom. And on the back of it, there was an illegal addition that was taken off about a year and a half ago, and we're adding a 2-car garage with the master below, and then above here is a master addition with a walk-on deck, and then there's a balcony out here that had the arches that you didn't like last time. And so this was the original floor plan, and the second floor was legal in 1950, and then the understory was legalized as a second unit in 1977. And what we're doing is we're changing out all the windows and doors. So here's the proposed, the garage on the bottom with the master closet and bathroom. And this is stairway up to the second floor that's there. And this is the stairway up to the front unit. And this is the entrance to the bottom unit. And we're going to block frame them because you guys really liked, we're not changing the location or the sizes of the windows on the front of the house. They're just going to be aluminum bronze anodized block frames, so you get the bullnose reveal. And the front door on the second floor is going to be wood, whereas both of them are, and then these ones are all bronze anodized.
Do you have a site plan that shows the adjacent footprints and approximate fenestration locations?
That's back here. That's this study here.
Sheet 810.
This is the house, and this is the balcony, and it's quite a ways away from the property line. And you can see, looking at the photos, there's some Melandri cypress, and we're proposing an 8-foot fence at this 20-foot. The house has a 20-foot setback, and we can put an 8-foot fence right along here. So that's what he's proposing right here. And this is one of the fenestrations in the house. So if you carry this over, there's about 6 inches here where you can see above the fence, where you'd be looking through the top of the window if you were standing on the balcony. And then this is the other adjacent footprint, but these windows are all existing except for a couple here. And there's a parking area here with a bunch of trees. So this house you can't really see even hardly from the street. This is the study that you were asking about.
So these windows are these windows?
Correct, looking this way, so we're looking straight on now.
Okay.
And you can see the little land use here.
Item 3 is study windows to retain their existing proportions, variations, and mullion breakdown.
Right, they were drawn incorrectly on the original set of plans on the front elevation.
So let's go to the elevations here.
4 and 8.5. That's the back. This is the front elevation with the correct proportions, and the windows are going to be changed out to match with the same fixed, the divided lights. These are the old steel windows like we have in like the 40s and 50s.
And this was a wooden door. What was this again? I forgot.
This one's wood as well, and then these ones are all bronze anodized metal.
Okay.
And on the, as you come up to the house, we changed Actually, when you look along the side, we're not doing the divided lights, but we could if that was something that the board would like here.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Item 4 was revised proposal to retain as much of the simple charm of the existing building as possible, which you talked about here.
Right, and that had to do with, we had arches on all these.
And you got rid of those.
We
Okay.
had bigger columns, so here's 18 inches this way and 2 feet the other way.
And now they're 18 inches square? Oh, no, they're 18 by 2 feet, I thought. Item 5 was study balcony proportions, details, columns, and headers, which you just talked about. Item 6, restudy the design of all second-floor columns at railing.
Right, which is along the top here. Before we had these big columns with sandstone caps. We took those off and made these 12 inches. And the wrought iron is actually this detail here. We changed it to 2 knuckles alternates to a spindle.
Okay.
Which, here's a photo of it on an existing house of how it looks with these 2x2 with a 2-inch ball atop.
Alrighty. 7 is verify in detail that the windows will be adequately recessed, which you showed us. 8, study retaining or remodeling the front awnings and the front balcony tile. Wasn't there like aluminum awning or something like that on there?
There are, and we're not proposing them.
It was canvas,
Yeah,
and then balcony tile. What was that about?
The front of the house.
Here's the awnings.
Right, yeah, we're not proposing the awnings because we're doing the balcony across here and getting rid of these two.
And the
one of the things that's changing is you see the shed roof on the front. We're going to take the hip and bring it all the way to the corner, which you can see on the roof plan, which is one of like A9, and then you can see it on this.
Yeah, maybe we should need the roof
Hard
plan.
to see here, it's right here. Comes from here up to the point where it just joins the ridge, and you can look at that.
Simple
You can see
hip.
that right here. Before it used to be like a little shed like this. It came to a point like that. So we're going to take that out, and that way, we could soffit the top of it. Go back to the sheet. We can soffit this area here with a little bit of stucco, and then beef this column up to a 6x6.
And so here, the existing tile on these steps is to remain?
Right, the board had requested it to remain. We could change it.
No, I'm just following what I'm going to say. Item 9 is study eliminating all arches, including arches at the front fencing. They may not be appropriate for the style we talked about.
Right, and we're doing the same exact wrought iron fencing that we're doing on the railings as in the front.
Okay.
For the front fence.
Item 10, some board members feel a hip roof would be more appropriate than the proposed gable at the rear.
And we did hip it.
Okay.
And that's on the roof plan as well.
And then item 11 is to provide a landscape plan.
We did not provide that.
Then we'll carry that over to the next meeting. With that, do you want to add anything else to your presentation?
Just on the site plan, where we're doing the new fence along the front, this will be an automatic gate. We're doing a little man door, and then bringing in probably the same brick look as the front along the walkway to delineate Unit A and Unit B.
Thank you.
So you can, as you walk, you'll be able to discern which way to go to get to the 2 separate units.
Alrighty.
And
with that, I will open up public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the board? Seeing nobody, and I don't have any, or I see people. Does staff have any comments? I will close public comment and return it to the board for questions of the applicant. And Chris did step down on this one. He was stepped down in the minutes, I noticed. No questions?
Yeah, the rear staircase. Are you proposing new railing on that, or?
Rear staircase. It'll probably just be a handrail because it'll be on a wall.
The photograph doesn't show a railing on it right now.
Oh, right now, no.
Right.
The whole side of that thing was torn off and it hasn't been replaced yet.
And the tile is also in, is that going to be repaired or replaced?
The sawteel that's on the ground, you mean? That's going to be
I think
demolished.
it says existing steps covered with existing tile. It looks like there's, from the photograph, if you look at A7.
1 second.
Oh, on the stairs.
Yeah, is that going to be, is that part of this project that gets repaired and railing all on that?
Correct, but that's where the addition's going, so that'll be more of just a handrail along that wall, and then the stairs will remain.
Yes, Kirk.
So just to clarify it, I believe what we were talking about regarding the tile on that front stair was that we didn't want you to just plaster over it. You don't have to keep the existing tile that's there, but
Okay.
we wanted it to be a
Yeah.
tile surface as opposed to a plaster
We'll
surface.
come back with something nice.
Okay. And then, is there a reason why you have to create a plaster soffit at that new entry
No.
roof extension? Could that be
It could be wood.
beam?
Yeah,
Could
we had a
open
beam on it at one time, and then I just,
Okay.
in matching with the neighborhood, I just kind of put the stucco on it, but we could go back to the beam.
Okay. And then I remember also there's a fountain in the front yard, right, that's being removed?
Right, that has to be removed.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's, is there any landscaping in that front yard?
There's some roses, and we're going to, when
We
we
don't
come
have a
in-
landscape plan, so
No.
we'll have to...
No, actually we don't. But if you go back to the site plan, there's a bunch of roses along the house. Over in here, there's like a big planter here, and there's a planter here, and we're going to cut about a foot here, and then within on all the sides here, and there's planters here. We're going to cut in planters along this and get rid of a bunch of the concrete out here
Okay.
with the landscape plan.
That's going to be one of my comments, is to provide some landscaping up there, significant landscaping.
Yeah, and get rid of a lot of that stamped concrete.
Questions? No questions? Stephanie, I'm stalling. I'm looking at you, but if you're ready to, or I'll go.
I have one more question about this railing on the second floor. Is it just stucco? It's just stucco. There's no cap at all?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I have a question, if you don't mind. Why are you re-roofing over this existing front bedroom and making the hip this wide when it was originally this wide? What's the reason for that?
We just think it'll look better to get rid of that little shed roof that comes out over the front entry, to put it in underneath an existing hip.
Okay. But there's nothing changing to this height. It's just this front little peninsula thing
Correct.
that
So
sticks out.
where it was coming up here before, it'll just shift over
Okay.
and come to the corner.
And then the second question is the spacing having to do with these columns and the spacing here. That was, did you ever study moving these up and you didn't like the look, or? I'm just wondering
Yeah,
about
we
the balance.
did. We had a plan where these were directly above, and it just didn't look right at all. There's little ones directly above. Seemed like they wanted to be in the center, and then these would be shorter on the ends, and then the middles would be the same. And then when we drew it up, we just took the space and divided it up and put them in. So it ended up being center on this one, but not on these two.
And then the reason why you are 2 feet by 18 inches, so you're not a perfect square, why didn't you make it 18 by 18 or 2 foot by 2 foot?
That's a good question. This just from the front gives it less massing, but from the side, since it's such a long linear space, we made it a little bit bigger on this facade rather than that facade.
All right, those are my questions. You have anything else, Stephanie? Nope.
You're showing us these pictures because of the railing? Is that
Right,
that's
correct,
the only
just for the
reason?
railing.
Okay.
That's
my
like a
other
big
question.
cantilevered balcony that's a little bit different, but just for the wrought iron.
Mhm.
Let's move to comments. And without a landscape plan, I don't think we can give it project design approval,
Okay.
unless the board feels strongly otherwise.
Chair, I'll comment. So I think the architecture is nearly there. I appreciate the changes that you've made, particularly the window detail. If I could look at that.
Oh, yeah, back one page. Yeah.
I realize you've only got a couple of inches there, but since you are reframing and redoing, you could get more of a slope there, which just tends to help create the illusion of depth in the surface, the recess of the window. Some more depth at the sill, or more slope at the sill, rather. It's minor point.
Okay,
but,
no, that's good.
And in regards to Paul's comment, I know you got some confusing direction last time, perhaps, but in my view, these second floor pilasters should correspond to the first floor columns. And it's a little tricky on these proportions, but I'll just throw out the suggestion that you go to a square column and maybe go to like 20 inches between the 18 and the 24. 24 is a little bit fat, and 18 tends to be just slightly thin. So 20, 21 seems to me, on having worked on similar designs like this, that around 20 or 21 works well as a square. And then having it correspond with the second floor pilaster, I think would just, again, simplify the composition and just give it more continuity. And then also the new framing over the entryway. I think if that was wood,
Okay.
and type, because are there exposed rafters on the existing eaves?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would just tie in with that exposed rafter look over the entry. I think that's a nice improvement. And as I mentioned, the tile on the front, and I really like to see a significant landscape area added, not just some borders, but a real landscape added to the front yard area, and some of that paving removed.
Okay.
Someone else want to jump in?
I will.
Yes?
I'll agree with Kirk's comments. And also add that in our last meeting, we talked about the mullions and of those windows. I would like to see the horizontal mullions that you talked about matching along this driveway side, at least, to be similar to the front of the house.
Okay. Just on windows?
The side windows,
Okay.
the operable units.
On the rear, too, you think, or just typically?
I'm okay with
Okay.
all the other elevations, not if you don't want to, but that elevation will be seen from the
Right.
roadway,
Uh-huh.
and so I think it should be consistent.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Gary or Keith?
Mr. Chair, I'll agree with Kirk's comments and then just add in reworking the balcony alignments and the proportions of the columns, maybe consider just adding a little more thickness to the header there, just so that it has that kind of more logical proportion of some extra, mass at the header.
Okay.
Okay. I had one comment, but I kind of wanted the other board's feedback on it. The other comments made, I agree with. I think they're appropriate. It has to do with the fence that's 8 foot tall, 5 feet from the adjacent neighbor's property, and whether that was just a little bit too tall, and whether 6 feet would be sufficient enough.
That was on E10, I think.
Oops, thank you.
On the way back.
I understand the reasons, and if the board can actually turn to their A10s and take a look at these pictures and realize where an 8-foot fence would be is just basically a smidgen below the top of the existing window. 6-foot fence would be 2 feet lower than that. Because this view is already taken from the second floor.
Correct. Yeah, all the pictures were taken from the windows on the second floor.
Okay. And then when you do the landscaping, is there going to be landscaping at this fence line?
There will be more, and right now there are these Landry cypresses and some bushes and stuff. And, we'll
And that's
show
on
what's
this side of the
existing.
property?
It's on our property, yes.
Okay.
Right along the cut that's in the driveway here in this planter zone. They just have like grass and stuff, so there's nothing on their side of it.
Seems to me that it's possible the neighbor would even prefer the higher fence for the, because of the balcony privacy issues. But,
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Chair? Yes, Gary.
Yeah, actually, I was headed to the same direction you were on the fence. Not so much on the height, but I thought it would be nice if we see some details or some design on that. And part of my comment would have been that the upper portion above the 6 feet be something that could be either lattice or veined or something that would allow some light through that might perhaps not add some privacy to it as well. So maybe the type of fence is what we need to take a look at, what you're going to do.
Okay.
And the rest of it, I agree with the other columns I agree about the column placement and Keith's comment about increasing the mass at the decking area below the deck.
So with that, would someone like to make an motion? And are you interested in indefinite or a 2-week or 4-week continuance?
Probably a little bit more indefinite for a landscape plan to come back, because we've talked to a couple of professionals, but I don't think he's contracted with them yet.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might make a question before we do a motion here. Given that our sole landscape architect has had to step down on this, review of the landscape plan seems a little problematic. So I would suggest, and see what the board's thoughts are on this, that we give the project design approval with comments, and the one of the comments being that a landscape plan be provided for courtesy review by one of our fellow board members, either from HLC or SFDB.
Yes, and then we can move the project forward.
Exactly.
Very
So
true.
I'll make.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. The way we handle these situations, finally, when our landscape architect has to step down, is we do get advisory comments from either an SFDB or HLC landscape architect, and we bring those comments typically to the consent calendar ABR reviewer for a formal landscape approval. So it still does need the landscape plan for an ABR project does need an ABR person to approve it. But we can bring in some advisory comments from another landscape architect on another board.
So can we give it project design approval today on the architecture and say that the landscape can be done at consent after the cursory review by the other?
Right. As long as it's clear it's a project design approval only of the architecture.
Okay.
one other comment, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to see if other board members feel the same way, but I would like to make sure that the ceiling of the balcony, the first floor ceiling of the balcony, is not just a flat plaster soffit, but has some kind of wood detailing, if not exposed beams, then decking, as opposed to just flat plaster.
Okay. Like some 2x
Yeah.
P&G.
Yeah.
Something.
Mm-hmm. So it could have a plaster header, like you're showing, that corresponds with the thickness of the columns, but then the rest being wood.
Soften it.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, can we have a motion?
Take a stab at it, Mr. Chair. So this would be for project design approval of the architecture with an indefinite continuance back to consent calendar for final approval with the following comments. Applicants to provide a preliminary landscape plan for advisory comments from either HLC or SFDB member, to add the horizontal mullions to the operable windows along the driveway side of the project, align the second floor balcony pilasters with the first floor columns below, add mass to the lintels of the balcony and change the first floor columns to a square proportion, add additional slope to the sill detail for the typical windows, provide a wood soffit at the entry roof area, and consider adding a wood soffit at the first floor balcony ceiling if it's visible from the public way. That's my comment.
Okay. Is there someone who wants to second that?
Second, under discussion, the fence detail.
What do you suggest? I'm inclined to leave it up to the applicant and their neighbor.
Have you had discussions with your neighbor about that fence?
Why don't we say this? Applicants to address the property line fence detail on the preliminary landscape plan.
Okay.
And the thought there being that perhaps if your landscape design can mitigate any privacy issues, then you can reconsider the fence height, but we'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
I would also strongly suggest that you talk to the neighbor, and if he's okay with an 8-foot fence that's stark, then that's one thing, but if he's not okay with that, then you need to do something about light or shorten the height.
Or landscape it rather than fencing.
Any other discussion? I would say a comment that Keith made is to study or suggest putting a wood surface. From my perspective, having a plaster thing up here is the simplest solution, even though wood is the nicest, but it's an economic decision more than a visual decision. And his point was whether it's seen from the public right away, even though it would be much nicer to have a wood ceiling in there. I would sort of concur that it's an evaluation that you'll make based upon the economics.
Okay.
And whether or not it's seen from the public right away. If the street's lower and you're looking up to it, yeah, that matters.
Yeah, it's a little bit low.
I think another option would be, is to do a lower soffit, so that the plastic beam and then it pops up,
Right.
but it can still be plastered.
Yeah, as the soffit drops, and be like a 6-inch return or something. Before
Right.
So with that, is there any other discussions? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. You're on your way.
Thank you very much.
And I will close this ABR for today, July 9th.